I'm Kyle Roed, and this is the Rebel HR Podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Rebel HR is a podcast for HR professionals who are ready to make some disruption in the world of work. Follow us online on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, rebelhumanresources.com, or follow me on Twitter at Rebel HR Guy. All right, listeners, I am so excited for today's show and to share with you some really exciting things that are happening with the SHRM organization and a great organization named JAG. So I have two awesome guests with me today. I have Mitch Taylor, who is the Director of Public Policy for SHRM. For those of you that don't know, SHRM stands for the Society of Human Resources Management, and there are over 300,000 worldwide members of SHRM. It's the world's largest HR professional association. So excited that Mitch can be here, and he's here to talk about his partnership with JAG. JAG stands for Jobs for America's Graduates, and we are going to be talking today with Janelle Duray, the Executive Vice President of the national organization. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kyle.
Well, appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you. So, Kyle, I have to ding you, though. You said Society of Human Resource Management. It's Society for Human Resource Management. You said of. It's for, man. I got to ding you. you for that.
Does that
Don't
mean do I
feel
lose,
bad.
Like,
Don't feel bad, because when we gave SHRM an award at our JAG National Leadership Awards luncheon last year, we screwed up on the plaque. We did the same thing, and then Mitch had us fix it. And then I was so excited that it was all done, but then COVID hit, and then he didn't go to the office for several months, and then I got an email a month later saying, Janelle, it's still incorrect. So I think we finally got it fixed, but don't feel bad, Kyle.
That story is accurate.
That's awesome. I deserve every lashing you can give me, Mitch. I've been involved as a volunteer leader for SHRM for half a decade, and I totally screwed that one up. Thanks for calling me on it. I just lost like one of my SHRM merit badges.
Maybe I'll put in a good word for you. See what I can do.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, again, really excited about today's show. I think there are some really inspiring and powerful things happening with SHRM and JAG's partnership. And so I'd really like to start out. Janelle, can you just tell us a little bit about your organization?
I sure can. We are a national nonprofit. We're 40 years old. We're actually carefully celebrating our 40th anniversary indoors this year, socially distant. But we launched in one state, and specifically launched there in order to reach young people in the state of Delaware who were not making it to high school graduation. For whatever the reason, they were not on track to graduate. And the governor looked at my boss and the founder of the organization, Ken Smith, and said, we must do better by young people in the state of Delaware. So Ken was the education policy advisor. A group of people came together, identified the young people that we wanted to serve, what they were looking for, and what support services they needed in order to, number one, graduate from high school, but then number two, what happens afterwards and how we're preparing them for what happens afterwards, meaning the world of work and ongoing education or post-secondary education. So long story short, the model works. We're now in 39 states and serving about 75,000 young people across 1,400 communities every year. And our students achieve just incredible outcomes. About 95% of them graduated from high school in the class of 2019. And over 80% of them are in what we call positive outcomes, meaning they're employed in post-secondary education or some combination of the two. And the program is primarily delivered in high school settings. So they go to a JAG class, and in the class, they learn employability skills, competencies. What are those essential skill sets you need regardless of whatever industry you go into? But these are the must-haves for that first job: the customer service orientation, the critical thinking skills, all of those pieces, resume development, interview skills. And then some really fun things that we've been incorporating over the last couple of years are building some more of these intentional partnerships at the national level, and then helping to liaise and hand those off to our state affiliates and ultimately our local programs to benefit young people directly. So SHRM is one of those partners. We're so excited about it, and we're just really, especially in the environment we're in now, I mean, I'd say JAG is needed more than ever. And the young people that we work with each and every day, and the specialists, our teachers that work with them, are just, they get you through some of these tough times that we're experiencing as a nation, because it's just such a story of resiliency and positivity, honestly.
I'm a big stats guy, so I want to call that out again. So the performance outcomes for JAG graduation rates 95%, and the U.S. high school seniors graduation rate on average is 84%. Kudos to you and your organization.
Thank you. And honestly, the kids that we work with, we refer to our students often as young people of great promise. So they may be experiencing some academic or environmental or economic challenges, but we're really an equitable based model. So we reach students where they're at, understand whatever those challenges are, and say, number one, we're going to help you, and we understand, and then let's get you on the right path that makes sense for you. What are your interests? What are your aptitudes? And then how can we plug in professionals like HR professionals if that's what you're interested in? So you have a professional walking alongside with you to support you and see your vision through. So yeah, I mean, the statistics are terrific, but I hope one day, Kyle, you can meet some of our students, because it'll make the statistics all make sense, because they're amazing.
I can attest to that.
Let's talk a little bit more about SHRM. Mm-hmm. And Mitch, why don't you just give us a little bit of an overview of your organization, and then ultimately how you partner and support JAG.
SHRM is the largest human resource professional association in the entire world. And the bottom line, it just boils down to, the economy is powered by strong businesses and dynamic workplaces. And that's just been magnified in the face of COVID and in the face of the kind of like the social unrest, if you will, that's taking place across the country. And SHRM really is the voice of all things work in the workplace, and really shaping the way employers and employees thrive together. We really have to put an emphasis on that right now, because, it's so interesting how you look at how society is kind of shifted. So, you have a lot of people that really look for, these high power organizations, Nike, Apple. They're all making these statements on the social injustices and unrest and things like that. And people really look for these brands to do that. And that's how folks are really deciding how they're going to support an organization. People called on SHRM to really do something. And I think you'll hear some more stuff coming forward. But I know you hear some more things coming forward with Together Forward at Work, which is an initiative recently launched, and you'll get more on that. But really, SHRM is a driver of social and economic change in the workplace, and we look to really foster mutually beneficial work environments that serve both businesses and employers. And, we have 300,000 plus members across the globe. That's worldwide, 300,000 plus members. And people usually are in awe by that number. But what really makes that number all the more powerful is when you look at the multiplier, those 300,000 plus members, our 300,000 plus members, really impact the 115 million workers and their families on a daily basis. So that's 300,000 plus HR professionals that are directly impacting positively 115 million people, workers and their families, every single day. And so that is the vital work that our members do. That is the vital role that SHRM plays. And here we are. And just with regard to, some of the things that Janelle was speaking to, those graduation rates of those students and the tremendous success of the program, SHRM, we definitely been very honored, extremely honored to be a part of that and to partner with them in 7 states in particular, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Missouri, New Hampshire, Kentucky. in Alabama, and Alabama's kind of on hold at the moment for pandemic reasons, and that's perfectly understandable. But beyond the students, getting these necessary skills, the SHRM really wants to see that these students are exposed to these to different careers that they may not consider. We really want to see that the students are getting those skills that they can literally translate into the workplace, because in many cases it's not always, the education is very important, the bachelor's degree, the master's degree, the law degree. But when you have students that can't, when you have people enter the workplace and they can't do something as simple as show up on time, you have a problem. And one of the things that we look to do with the partnership is really make sure that they have just those core skills to be productive and be included, in the workplace. And SHRM, we're all about inclusion. It's, people just can't be in the workplace; they have to feel included. So that's our partnership in a nutshell.
Wait. So, just want to clarify, you're supposed to show up to work on time? I've been doing this all wrong.
I have my days too, so. But yes, you're supposed to show up on time.
But a great call out though, and if you go and you talk to countless HR professionals and ask them what are the things that they want most in talent and people that they're recruiting, and you hear time and time again, it's the soft skills.
Yep.
Which is exactly
you can train
what
them in the other. Just make sure that they show up to work on time, like you said.
Right. And it's funny. So Janelle and I were actually working on just that topic, soft skills. We were really working feverishly at the end of last year, in a number of different arenas and initiatives, and certainly within our partnership, and really focusing on those soft skills. And then all of a sudden, so January came, and we were ready for all this momentum. And then February, you start kind of hearing about, okay, so now we have some cases in the United States, and of course, being that we're both based in DC, we were kind of hearing some stuff early, stuff that early things coming from just contact saying, hey, so the country might be headed towards a shutdown. And so it really just stopped that momentum. But those soft skills are something that will, I think once we kind of get this thing back rolling, the soft skills are going to be front and center again, because the soft skills are just so important, especially now where you have an environment where communication is just, communication is vital. And clear communication and honest communication is just vital right now, because you have so many people that are just talking past each other. I just can't stress that enough. I'm sorry, Janelle, if I took up all the time hamming it up here.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good.
Janelle, so understand that's critical need for a number of employers. How does JAG support that soft skill development for their students?
Jobs is our first name. So the soft skills are what the entire program is built around. We have what we call the essential employability skills. There's 37 of them. And Mitch is right. We were really looking at updating some assessments and layering in other components that employers continuously say are priority. But these skill sets are pretty, when you bring them to an HR professional, they're exactly what we've been talking about. How to appropriately apply for a job, the interview skills, the customer service orientation, the critical thinking, the showing up to work on time, ready to work, all those pieces. And that is kind of the center of the program. Of course, when you come into the JAG program, it's all about building relationships, communication, as you were saying, Mitch, and the specialist recognizing that a young person may not be succeeding in the traditional high school setting for whatever reason, is that person who's going to be that caring adult, that mentor, that consistent presence, that no matter what happens, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to hold you accountable for your success. I'm going to be there to help you have the opportunities, but you need to take account for your own success as well. So we have these employability skills competencies and we deliver them through project-based learning. So, education, how it was formatted the first time or created in the country was, led by the private sector industry and what the private sector needed at that time, which was reading, writing, arithmetic. And that was in that first industrial revolution. And that worked for a long time. But then we needed to get to some more of these critical skills, the soft skills, customer service, communications, all those pieces. And the education system didn't always shift in that direction. There's a lot of testing and assessment of how students are doing, and not everyone thrives in that type of setting. And we definitely see that with our students. So project-based learning is the approach that is much more in alignment with how the world of work works. It's not like you get a job and then your boss is like, all right, here's your assignments for the next 9 months. I'll see you in 2 weeks when you'll take a test, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Especially now, we are going to focus on this. Now we need to pivot because COVID hit. Now we need to pivot because the country is requiring us to pay attention to these social justice issues, and we must do right by our employees and our communities to have these conversations and think about being more inclusive and equitable. Mm-hmm. And that's what project-based learning is. It puts students at the center of their learning. They learn by doing, they learn by failing. And then also we layer in the employer engagement components, the HR leaders to come in and speak to our students. And at the end of the day, at the end of a project, then they have this public product in which they can showcase to the community, to their teacher, to their peers, to their school, what they've learned on. And then throughout that project, then JAG, we make sure that our employability skills competencies are layered in. So they are introduced to those competencies, they get to practice them, and then they get to master them. And I do have to do a shout out for Iowa JAG, because Iowa JAG was at the forefront of project-based learning and has been doing it for years. And they actually are the ones that brought it to the JAG National Office, which is now our mode of instruction and our learner-centered instruction.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my story now, because I can't hold it in, because it was so cool.
Let it out.
So my experience with working with IJAG, or Iowa JAG, the exposure that I had was actually at a SHRM Volunteer Leaders Summit a few years back, and we were doing something called the A Team, which stands for the Advocacy Team, and we were going to, a little shout out to the A Team if there's any A Team members listening. And we were going to Capitol Hill to talk to our elected representatives, and we had 2 IJAG students with us. And the topic that we were advocating for was related to increasing the deductible amount for tuition assistance from an employer. And to listen to these 2 students stand in front of an elected representative, share their story, share their truth, and talk about the benefit and the impact of the adjusting the legislation and the regulation. And I never would have been able to do that,
right,
with the poise and the energy and the passion. And these students were absolutely exceptional. And I guarantee you, if either one of them wanted a job or was looking for a job, there were like 75 HR people that would have hired them in a heartbeat after the job they did. So whatever you're doing is working. It's very, very, very powerful experience, and showcases the benefit of the SHRM JAG connection. I just think if you're an HR professional and you're wondering, how can I help my community? How can I help people who maybe have a barrier in front of them get successfully employed and expand the talent pool in my local community that I'm trying to impact? It's I struggle to find where's the downside here?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think there is one.
Students have like the best currency when it comes to speaking to elected officials. And when you get a story like that, where a student, is able to go into someone's office and really lay out an issue for them and really bring some meaning to it, that's one of the most powerful things. But don't discount the impact that your presence had either, Kyle. And I challenge, and I said that every HR professional that's listening to this podcast, because that confidence comes from programs and partnerships such as SHRM and JAG, because when you look at the project-based learning, the SHRM members come in and really provide those mentorships. I wish that I had a program, I think that was as in-depth as this was. And I had mentors along the way. And I won't say when I graduated high school. I'm finally getting to the age where I can do that now. So I won't say that. But
no judgment.
Okay, thank you. but it's so vital that a program like this where HR professionals go to these students and especially in some of these areas, the most vulnerable, whether that be urban or rural, where resources are a little scarce, things like that, and they get these just direct mentorships from these individuals and from our members and things like that really, really, really make the difference. And so when they're asked to go to the Hill, whether that be a part of our volunteer leader business meeting, or that they come in town for one of JAG's programs and they go up on the Hill, that confidence really does come from all those adults that they have an opportunity to learn from and that are really helping them hone their skills. And that's where this partnership is just, I think, so magical and so powerful, where it really gives these students a voice.
It was so great that we were able to do that and bring some of our students to the Volunteer Leadership Summit, and because they got that day in the life experience, because I remember you guys were at the Gaylord in the National Harbor, and we were, of course, our hotel for the students was downtown, so they had to get up at like 5:30 in the morning and take a bus and go down to the Gaylord, where they met with their SHRM volunteers and had breakfast, and then they all went together. And then they walked the Hill, went and met with their representatives, had that time to, talk in their commute across the river. And it was just to spend that time. And it's not just, here's a 30-minute meeting, do some informational interview sharing and all that stuff. Like they got to spend a day in the life of what members of the SHRM community were doing, coming from across the country to go to the Hill and bring their cases. And I like to think too, you're absolutely right. I mean, we always impress upon our partners, and SHRM has gotten this from the get-go. It's our students need to hear you, and they need to see you. They need to know your story. Because when you look at a professional, if they're wearing a suit and a tie, I swear to goodness, like kids think they were born with a suit and tie on. You need to make your story real, humanize it, and especially when we listen to our students of color and the need to see leaders who look like them, I mean, that's what this is all about, is sharing those stories and showing students that, yeah, there is a seat for you at the table here, and we're going to help you get there. And then I also love those partnerships where the employers will come back and say, man, I think I might have learned more than they did. And in terms of, what the next generation of the world, the working world wants, what they value, what they want to see in their employers and in their companies. And it's been fun to see some of those dynamics play out too. I won't pick on any companies in general, but I'm thinking of one vice president in general of a financial institution who said he and a colleague went into the classroom, and he's like, I was all right. I had met the kids before, and it blew my mind that they were, their school was only a few blocks away from our headquarters, but they had never been in our lobby. But he's like, my colleague was terrified, and was like, you could see his pit stains under his shirt, and kids were kind of poking fun at him a little bit. And he's like, I heard a couple phrases like, oh, the Titan white guys are here. And he's like, and honestly, like that was he's like, it was just as meaningful for us, and we learned as much from the students and our own community as I think they learned from us. And those are the types of information exchanges that I think are so important and so critical, because we can't, if we're gonna create stronger societies, if we're gonna work together, if we're gonna have strong workplaces, then we need to be listening to the next generation of upcoming talent.
Absolutely. And with that, one of those skills they need to learn too is also, I would say, discretion. That's something that we can always teach them. I mean, we all know that kids are brutally honest, but man.
Yes.
So discretion in the workplace is one of those lessons that we got to make sure we convey in our partnership, man.
We got to build that into one of our projects.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you want to find out how cool you really are, go volunteer in a middle school classroom for a few hours.
So it's funny you say that, Kyle. I've been doing public speaking for like 10 years, and I would say
he was actually born. He was one of those that was born in a suit.
Oh boy. Maybe not. I don't know.
PowerPoint slide in hand, ready to go.
Not PowerPoint. I mean, I guess I don't care. I'll tell you, I was born in '82, so PowerPoint wasn't around yet, but I was around for Oregon Trail.
Hey,
yeah, that was good.
I died of dysentery every
Did we all?
Yeah, and you could never get through all the meat before it went bad.
Right. It didn't matter how many like buffalo or bunnies you shot. I mean, it just didn't. It didn't even matter. But I'll go back to what I was saying. So I've been doing it for about 10 years now. And in my previous position, where I was working in a city government, I was a legislative affairs director. The mayor had asked me to put together a high school program where it was called the Mayor's Public Affairs Academy. And we partnered with the high school, and this is down in South Florida, where I'm from. Born and raised South Floridian right here. So every year I had to go in and speak to a different graduating class of seniors and get them interested in this program. And the thing was, I have an auditorium full of about 100 to 150 students, just comprising of about 3 or 4 classes. So that kind of tell you what overcrowding was like down in South Florida in our schools sometimes. I found that going to speak to those high school students, honestly, I spent more time prepping my message and prepping the information and prepping the mayor and prepping everyone that was to speak at this particular session than I did when I knew I was going to be on TV and had to speak at a council meeting or had to go out and speak in the community to some of our residents or go before the county commission or when I traveled up to Tallahassee to do some speaking up there and things like that. And, so I really do think that, at times our youth, it is a really good information exchange because the pressure is just different when you're going to speak to the youth because you got to find a way to connect with them. And one thing 100%, they're going to be 100% honest with you. And that goes down to, the pit stains in your shirt, if you have them, or, they can detect if you're not confident what you're saying. And to be honest with you, if they think that you're BSing them, they detect that and they're going to let you know. And you're going to know the minute you've lost them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think myself and a number of HR practitioners are fascinated with is the generational differences in the workplace. And, the kind of the common question is, so what's the next generation going to be like? And we had a few shows back. We actually had one of JAG's interns, Aaliyah Vasky, who is a bona fide Gen Zer on, and she gave us some great insights into that generation. But what insights can you give our listeners about the upcoming generation, and what can we expect, and what does that future talent pipeline look like for us?
I think, and I listened to that episode last night, so I would be ready if you asked me about Aaliyah's episode. So I'm glad I did.
Awesome.
Thanks, Janelle. Thanks.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. I think what Mitch said is right. They're savvy and they know they can see through BS. They want to know what's in it for them. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but are you going to take care of me?
Right.
Like, are you going to pay me a living salary?
Right.
Are you going to help me with my benefits? And do you mean what you say? And I want my voice to be heard. We're long past that transactional work environment where this is your job, do it, and I'll come back to you when there's another task. the culture that young people want to make sure that they are part of a culture that they believe in. And I mean, let's be honest. And I know we were going to talk about positive things on this episode, but I was just having this conversation with a colleague earlier today. If I were someone finishing college right now and I was going into the workplace, I've noticed that the next generation really uses this as inclusive language, we, in terms of the approach as a team, as a company, as an organization. And previous generations are kind of like, well, that's your role, this is my role. Play in your side, I'll play in my side, and we'll come together when we need to, when times call for it. And I appreciate this and I get it, because if I was a young person that was like going into my first job straight out of college, or my first professional job, I would kind of look at people and be like, things aren't going so well right now. Why don't you listen to us a little bit and let us share our ideas with you to see if we can maybe do something better together? Because when we look at things like environmental impacts and where we're going with that, and if we look at the social justice issues and what we're seeing across the country and protests and people taking a stand for what is right, as a Gen Zer, I would say this is about we have ideas and we have thoughts and we have suggestions on what should be our culture moving forward together to benefit all of us. And that's very different than I think previous generations, where it's a lot of this manager, direct report, transactional environment in the workplace, like from, my parents' generation. I'm the same age as Mitch. I'm 2 years younger.
I was born in '83, so we're all
right there. Oh gosh, okay,
even though
all right.
I've been in HR for 2020, so I look like I'm about 10 years older at this point. But
to go on top of what Janelle was saying, so our president and CEO, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., he's been talking about. I've heard him countless times speak about just the impacts that we have. I think we have 5 generations that are in the workplace or preparing to enter the workplace. So you have like this just all of a sudden you have this melting pot in the workplace of all these different sets of values and just kind of different ways of growing up and different views on the world and different views on the workplace, quite frankly. I mean, I would say the new generations, echoing some things that I've heard our president and CEO say, a lot of, they want to know, hey, so can I work from anywhere? Do I have to always show up to this office? And they're certainly invested in the culture, just like Janelle said. So what is the culture like? They really look for like meaningful work. Salary is always a big thing, but I think sometimes, I think you found there have been some instances with some of these generations, younger generations, where it's not even always all about the salary. It's kind of like, okay, so they got to believe in what they're doing. And believe in a task. And then that could also lead to some other interesting things where, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to do this. This is what I'm interested in, so I'm just going to do this. Well, that's not quite how it works in the workplace. But I mean, so it really is just, interesting, because all of a sudden we're going to see all these different, and not like I say, a clash of values, but just all these other different generations coming together. It really is making for an interesting thing. And that's what makes a partnership like this just so impactful, so powerful, because we really are mentoring those that will eventually take our place at some point. And then they'll find themselves in our position preparing to hand this thing off to the generation behind them. And they're going to have to deal with a different set of values. I encourage anyone to go back and look at some of our president CEO's comments, and even our corporate secretary and chief of staff, Emily M. Dickens. She's made comments about the generational workforce and just how that's having such an impact in the workplace.
And that echoes Aaliyah's comments from a few weeks back, where she didn't use the word BS. She was very eloquent in her description, but
thank you.
She essentially said that if we feel like somebody is being inauthentic with what they are telling me or what their company stands for or what they actually do, then we're just not going to be interested in working for them.
Yeah.
And so I think I look at that as if you're looking at business continuity planning and you're looking at succession planning and you're looking at what am I doing 10 years from now, you better start to figure out what this generation wants and modify your culture and your policies and your practices so that they can be successful.
Yeah. And Kyle, COVID is really honestly accelerating a lot of the ideas and forcing businesses to embrace these ideas that are actually appealing to a lot of young generations. Work from home, or just remote work in general. Now, of course, people can overdo it, and they kind of get lost or get ghosts, and start showing up late to meetings, things like that, or you can't. Obviously, you shouldn't be working from out of state, and you're not expected to kind of be out of state. But what COVID really is accelerating a lot of what businesses have been forced to embrace that isn't quite frankly appealing to young generations.
Yeah, so their desires could actually help us be better if we were to listen.
Yeah.
So Mitch, why don't you mentioned this earlier. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the Together Forward at Work program from SHRM. I've seen a few things come through, and I'll put a link to that program in the show notes, but I'm curious if you can just give us a quick overview of what that program is and what it's focused on.
So Together Forward at Work really is a call to action to bring racial equality to the workplace. It's the place we know best and have served the longest, and a place where we, our members, and our business community can bring our unique professional talents to stand together against all forms of social injustice. And, it was an initiative that was born of our executive team, of course, spearheaded by our president and CEO, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., at their last executive strategic planning meeting. It's in response to all that we see going on in the country right now. And some of you may have seen the commercials that are airing on some of the major news networks. It's in the hands commercials. It's all in our hands, which honestly, that is probably my favorite campaign since being here. We did a 19th Amendment kind of mini campaign last week, celebrating that on the 26th of August. And in the video that we produced, I encourage anyone to go look at that at elections.shrm.org. Just check that video. That video is so powerful and moving. But the hands, back to Together Forward at Work, it really is a direct response to what we see going on in just all around us with the social and racial injustices and inequities. And it's about time that, we really have to get serious about addressing these things in the workplace, especially, as I said before, where, I think people, employees, consumers, they're really looking to just the larger organizations with the recognition to really take a stand. And that's not something I can recall seeing in my childhood, where when things are going on in the world that you had, again, an Apple, Nike or GE or Coca-Cola really making like a direct statement to a specific issue. And Together Forward at Work really challenges all of us and really calls all of us to action to really do something about this. It's a message that's evolved. And honestly, Kyle, last year we launched Convos and Coffee, which focused on workplace culture. You can see how that message has gotten just so much larger because culture is so much more important now because of COVID, because of the reactions to what we're seeing with some of our citizens and police and our political climate, all these things. And that's what Together Forward at Work is about. 3 tips that have come out of this so far for productive and safe conversations at work is just, number one, listen. Don't conflate, compare, or contrast. And number two, you want to discuss and not debate. And folks really need to understand the difference between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And three, set goals and honor the feedback that you receive. So I mean, we're all in this together, and we all have to do our part. And also attached to that is we have the Blue Ribbon Commission on Racial Equality, which is spearheading bold action and change. And so what this commission will be doing, the BRC, as we call it, is just a team of just experts that are coming together to assess the effectiveness of current programs and models, including barriers to success in the workplace, outline a step-by-step roadmap to create inclusive, diverse, and safe workplaces that apply accountability measures at all levels of an organization, produce and curate content and tools to foster continued professional development and increase equity in the workplace, drive a longer range agenda on organizational diversity and bias in the workplace, and identify and scale more programs that have been shown to successfully address the pipeline and from recruitment. And when I say pipeline, I want to fold in the E2 pipeline, which is education to employment. And Janelle might touch on that one. And that's something that we've also discussed. But recruitment and retention in diverse workplaces. I mean, the bottom line is here. Diversity is one thing in the workplace, but diversity, Kyle, is me and you in a room together, me and Janelle in a room together. But do we really feel included and safe? Do we feel valued? Do we value each other's opinions? And that's really what Together Forward at Work is about. And I'm really, really so looking forward to what the Blue Ribbon Commission comes up with, and looking to put those recommendations in that material into action and put it into action in our partnership with JAG.
I love that. And it's there's a distinct difference between diversity, inclusion, and ultimately equity.
Yes, it is. Indeed.
Right.
And Johnny has been such a proponent of that. And, we'd be remiss not to note that Johnny Taylor serves on the JAG National Board. So his commitment for the organization goes to the very highest level. And he has always said it's not just about diversity, but it's about inclusion, and that feeling of inclusion and safety in the workplace. It just resonates for when you think of, preparing the next generation, Jobs for America's graduates, our students, and all the conversations that we've had to this point, and them, they recognize authenticity. And if you're just saying, we believe in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but you're not practicing what you preach, and you're not creating that environment of inclusion, then number one, I mean, the kids aren't going to be interested. Number two, I don't see a good future for your organization, your company, if you're not taking these conversations seriously.
Right. I mean, the bottom line is, the hands, of a unified workforce, that's what's going to pull us through to just kind of a reimagined, kind of stronger workplace that we're headed towards. I mean, in many ways, the future of work is here, and yet we're still careening towards, we're still careening towards the future of work. But you could make the argument that the future of work is just here. I mentioned much earlier, people talking past each other. People really have to feel safe with communicating with each other and start talking to each other and listening. And listening. And I'll say that again, listening to each other.
What was that?
You mean listening?
All together now. Listening.
Listening.
Yeah,
Listening. Right. My mom would always remind me growing up that faith without works is dead, and I'm pretty sure. That's a so common saying, so it's not exclusive or anything profound. But you could also argue that diversity without inclusion and equity is dead.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Well said. Well, we are actually closing in on our time here together. So, Mitch, where can people find out more about you and get connected with you?
Sure. So you can definitely look me up on SHRM.org. But if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can via email, Mitch, MITCH.Taylor, TAYLOR @ SHRM.org. but please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'd be more than happy to, fill anyone in on just what's going on. I definitely encourage people to visit. We have we're doing a big elections like kind of 2020 center, and I want to shout out my entire government affairs team. I definitely want to shout out, head of government affairs, Emily M. Dickens. She's the best and has really prepared us for this. But, please visit elections.shrm.org, where you can see just kind of how we're breaking down the races and providing information on the races and content on, what some of these things can mean. Obviously folks have been talking about the Senate may swing to the Democrats, so of course, that I mean, in this climate, that's a monumental shift in what could occur for the future of our country. And of course, we all are watching the election either with bated breath or we just can't wait for it to be over. And I'm somewhere in between. Also, Together Forward at Work, which I mentioned, is literally Together Forward at Work. Spell at. Don't use the abbreviated sign. So Together Forward at Work.shrm.org is where you can check out that new initiative.
Great, thank you, Mitch. Janelle, how can our listeners get connected with you and your organization?
Yeah, well, I would encourage everyone who's interested in learning more about JAG to visit our website, www.jag.org. That's JAG.org. I'm getting so good at not saying JAG. Getting away from my Minnesota accent, but for the Minnesota listeners out there, it's www.jag.org. And then, you'll see my name on the website, but my email is my name, Janelle.Duray@jag.org, JANELLE.DURAY@jag.org. I was so excited when you were talking about this, Mitch, the Together Forward, because, and I was going to tell you this yesterday on our conference call that you could not attend, but we'll get it on the next one.
Ooh, edit that out. Well, actually, no, don't edit it out. I'm on vacation, so I'm okay.
He's on vacation. I'm not going to shame you for not working on your vacation. But there's probably in about a month from now, we will be sharing some more information about what we're calling the Love Project, which is lifting our voices for equity. So our students, our specialists, our entire network across the country have just, like the rest of the nation, is just coming forward and saying, we want to talk about these things. We want to talk about diversity. We want to talk about systemic racism. And we want to address these issues in our communities. So through the project-based learning approach that I mentioned before, we are launching what we're calling the Love Project, and we've created kind of a general framework so students can plug it in how they see fit for their communities. And they're really going to be tapping into two elements of the JAG program, our civic awareness and our civic engagement, which is, part and parcel to the JAG program, in addition to all the employability skills we talked about. So we're going to have 5 pillar communities. We have them identified, but not public just yet. And we're going to be sharing and showcasing and listening the voices of our students on what they are doing in their communities with their specialists through the JAG program to keep making this push towards equity across the country. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have a landing page for that. And then Mitch, as we're talking about reimagining our partnership with SHRM, it's just a beautiful opportunity, I think, for HR leaders to work alongside students on these critical issues. So excited to see how SHRM and JAG can work together on this.
I think we'll figure something out. I mean, honestly, talking to these students now and, giving them the full breadth. I mean, they're so passionate about this issue. And just looking at, I have to believe that a lot of folks that we see out here protesting, the peaceful protesters, not the rioting and looting, the peaceful protesters. I have to think that, it's one good thing about it is, regardless of if you have the opportunity to really just see the actual peaceful protests, being that I've actually been in DC, you can't help but see it.
Right.
But when you see folks out holding a sign, there's one cool thing about it, and the one cool thing is you see a lot of youth at the forefront of this thing. And so I think having the ability to work with them, of course, in a much more calm and orderly time in the structure of school and things like this, I think that this is going to be definitely be a key to building those positive work environments that you want to have. So Janelle, I'm happy to hear that you're very excited about it, and look forward to keeping the work going. And also, I would mention you can find me on LinkedIn to C. Mitch Taylor. You connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really bad about answering messages on there. But since I said it, I guess I'll check them now.
Now you got to start checking.
Now I got to start checking since I put it on the podcast. So
Yeah, I
You
found
got to
it.
turn on that push notification.
Thank you so much. Wonderful conversation.
All right.
Absolutely enjoyed hearing your perspectives, and I know that it will be beneficial to our listeners. I'll have all that information in the show notes if you missed any of it. And thank you both again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were hurt during this podcast.
Baby.